Hello, hello. How are you doing, Mr. Ramirez?
Good, how are you? I'm
Good.
Joe.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I got the better half of E14 with me now.
All right, good.
You were dealing with the B team earlier.
Yeah.
She admits.
Just joking.
Go ahead and give him the, I'm gonna go ahead and look over this if you want to talk to him about how we do it.
Okay, so when we first come on, we have our recording, our intro pre-recorded. So we just say, welcome back to E14 podcast. And we do just a brief mention of who we have with us. And you can acknowledge, hey, happy to be here. And then we go into our disclaimer. And then that's when Heath will ask you to introduce yourself and, just a brief background of who you are and what you do and all of that. And then we go into the topics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
You got the topics
Yeah,
there?
got him right here.
Okay.
Are we going off that list you had?
Yeah, if that's cool with you.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Everything good?
Let's go. You ready, Joe? You got
Ready.
a beer?
I got a drink. I'm not gonna be drinking that much.
Cool, cool.
Okay, everybody ready?
I'm ready. You ready?
Yep, ready.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to E14 podcast. I'm Jamie Britt.
And I'm Heath Britt.
And together we are E14. And today we have with us.
We have Lieutenant Jose Ramirez from Medical Department at Special Boat Team 22. Thanks for being with us, Joe.
Thanks, it's an honor to be here.
Appreciate it.
Before we get started, this is our last episode for our 4-part series, To Hell with the Stigma and Mental Health Awareness. So the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of our own and not the United States Navy or our respective commands.
You know what that means, right?
Go ahead.
Y'all can take it or leave it.
So loud when you do that.
It's important.
All right. So go ahead. Let's start us off.
Yeah. So it's been a while since we've done a podcast.
I know. Yeah. Actually, we just moved. LT.
What's
We
that?
just moved and we got this new studio and this new setup. And this is you're our very first guest in our new studio.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Congratulations. So if we're rusty,
Congratulations.
please forgive us, guys, because it's been a couple weeks. We got to finish this series up so we can move on to bigger and better
thanks for your
things.
patience.
Yeah. So, hey, LT, tell us a little about yourself, man.
So I've been in the Navy 27 years. I started out enlisted, E1 corpsman. I was an ortho tech. I was a sub IDC, crossed over to the PA community. In the PA community, I deployed 3 times, all with SOCOM, 1 to Afghanistan, 2 to Africa. And now I'm just working on transitioning out, retirement
Right.
soon.
Oh, nice.
Right. I want to say something about LT. He's a humble guy because he was a HMC and he talks a lot of smack about being a JO, but he provides a lot of leadership in that medical department over 22, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. You do
Thank
a damn good job.
Mustang. So Mustang JO is a little different than normal JO.
Oh yeah, but he talks shit about I'm just a JO.
That's what you need to do.
After being a chief, it's good to do the old shrug. Like, hey, I don't know what
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. you get to pick
That's
your
my
battle.
favorite thing about being a first class. What do I know? I'm just a first class.
So I would definitely say from being a submariner and also being your tours to the Persian Gulf area and then your NSW experience, you've seen a lot of stuff in your time. Am I wrong to say that?
No, yeah, well, you're correct in saying that. So on the sub, we had a really high mental health rate. I remember my first year on the sub, I had 46 or 47 guys go to mental health, and I had to get them off the sub in the first year. We were coming out of the dry docks. Around that time, we had a couple suicides. Then as a PA, we had lost some guys over in Afghanistan. We actually had our CO shoot himself out there before Christmas, and then a lot of mental health issues on the backside. And then coming back I was stationed at a Belle Chase when I got pulled as an IA to go to Afghanistan. And then I was doing out processing over at Gulfport from people coming back from deployments all over the world. So I got to see that part of it too. And that's where I kind of realized that everybody has a different trigger. Some it's combat, some it's not combat, some it's stress related. There's so many different facets to mental health that people don't understand because they're just looking at it from their perspective. Well, I went through it and I'm okay. You or mine was tougher than yours, and that's not the case. Everybody's different, everybody's an individual, and you have to just figure out what makes them click.
Right, that's true. And I had that thing not too long ago. Well, I had all this happen to me and I'm fine. But then a lot of people that I held a lot of respect for had issues and they told me about it. And then I realized, hey, it's on the individual, because maybe what I went through wasn't the same what they went through. Maybe if I went through the same crap they went through, maybe I'd be in the same position. So it really, meeting all these great people has really opened my eyes. And then, you know, I had my own stuff, as you know of, and it really opened my eyes a lot. And it can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. It's hard to pinpoint one certain thing for anybody. So, you know, as a leader, you have to step back and understand that just because you can take it doesn't mean somebody else can take it, or because they're taking it doesn't mean that you are able to comprehend and undergo the same stressors that person is. They may be handling it better than you, and you may be the one that needs the help as a leader.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah, and you know what I've noticed, like you said before, sir, there's no isolated incident that you can pinpoint that says this is what's going to cause mental health issues. So everyone has different family lives. They come from different backgrounds. And so for years and years and years of dealing with whatever it may be, rough neighborhoods or parent issues. And then on top of that, they have these things that the military, different situations that the military provides for us. You never know when that straw is going to be the one that breaks the camel's back,
Absolutely. And I may be getting a little ahead of myself here, but that's the whole purpose when we do a psych evaluation on somebody, or they come in to see us. We start back, well, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your mom and dad. Tell me, where you grew up. What was your childhood? Did your mom's dad get divorced? Did you lose any family members? Things like that. So we have to go back to the very basic bottom line, the base, and build our way back up to see how all of that affected them on top of what they're going through now.
Right. Definitely. Okay. So before we get deep into this conversation, I'd like to take a break from a word from our sponsors. All right, everybody, welcome back to the E14 podcast. I have with us Lieutenant Joe Ramirez from the SBT 22 Medical Department, talking about a little mental health. So LT, I want to start out by just asking a question. What's kind of the science behind what causes mental illness in the brain?
So I'm going to touch the wave tops on this. Mental illness, right? That is how you cope and comprehend with different behaviors or scenarios that you've been experienced in your life, I should say. And then your mental health is how your brain structures, your chemistry, all of that functions to help you cope. It's coping mechanisms. There's some hormones and neurotransmitters in the brain that actually help regulate and adjust you. And if you have a chemical imbalance like that, or somehow over time the stressors or too much of this neurotransmitter or hormone can send you into a more of a stress situation, anxiety, OCD, whatever it may be. So the basic hormone that we have that kind of everybody has all of these, but that you use all the time would be norepinephrine. And what that does is it mobilizes the brain and body. It helps regulate your blood pressure, it keeps you focused, your alertness, and that's through your body all the time. Norepinephrine is both a neurotransmitter and a hormone. So just depending on how you feel and how you act and react to things, increases and decreases your level of that. Also, you have epinephrine. Epinephrine is a hormone that, it causes muscle contraction, it regulates your blood pressure, your heart rate. It's a stress response hormone. And that's where you get that fight or flight. You get put in a situation and you have to make a split second decision. That's where you kind of decide, am I going to fight or flight or what I need to do? And that's your epinephrine. So, you always hear, I get a boost of adrenaline. Well, that's what we're talking about with that. All of these are working in the brain. The ones we see most of the time, or that you hear about most of the time in mental health, is dopamine. Dopamine's a reward neurotransmitter. It's released by the neurons, and that's one of those to where you have something good happen to you, your body kind of goes to an emotional response because you have an increase of dopamine. It makes you happy. It makes you better. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is serotonin. Serotonin regulates your mood and your social behavior. So when we talk about that, that's a neurotransmitter that's in your brain. And if you have too much, you can, or too little, you can result in anxiety, OCD, depression. That's where that chemical imbalance comes off. And that's where a lot of our medications that we use in mental health are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. We bring down the serotonin or we bring down the norepinephrine, and that's where you hear the terms SSRIs and SNRIs, or the medications we use. But all we're trying to do is regulate those chemicals and hormones in your brain to make you have a better response and be able to cope a little bit easier.
So I have a question, because you mentioned that, we always have these hormones and all of this stuff in our body, but how come sometimes our hormones are get imbalanced? Or like how can we be fine one time and then all of a sudden the imbalance happens?
Okay, good question. So as we get older, your body changes, of course. As you're exposed to something, I heard in a couple of, I think it was the Drive On podcast, where he talked about you live under a certain amount of stress, and you had talked about it too when you were in Djibouti, that you were always waiting for something to happen, right? Well, you get that stress reaction and your body's constantly pushing out that much fight or flight epinephrine or serotonin, or decreasing your serotonin. Your body starts to get out of whack. It's kind of like one of the things, when we talk about like using steroids for medical treatment, right? Guy gets sick, he comes in, he wants a dose of steroids because he knows he's going to make him feel better faster. Well, if we give you so much of this stuff for so long, your body realizes that you have this exogenous steroid and it shuts down your adrenal gland. So if you were to stop that, then you would go into adrenal crisis. The same thing kind of happens. Again, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I'm not digging too deep into that because I'm a family practice guy. But when you have so much of, you're always on alert, or your body changes, your body adapts. It adapts to what you're going through. And when you're doing this for 7 months or a year or 6 months even, your chemicals, how much they're producing changes because your body adapts to that. And then you come back and you just can't go overnight back to where you were before you went. And your train of thought changes. You start having these dreams, or you start being on alert when you walk into Walmart, where's the exit, or on the highway when I can't be around these other cars. All of that brings back those responses, and you don't mean to do it, but your body's already adjusted to that fight or flight response, and it brings your levels all out of whack compared to, say, your spouse or your significant other who's sitting next to you that's like, what is going on? And they don't understand it because your body's just reacting. You've trained it to go there.
That's
Wow.
interesting.
So these people that have some sort of mental illness, so when they walk into a Walmart, like you said, and they're freaked out, it's just because their chemical balance just jacked up in their head, and they need something to regulate it a tad to get back to normal as possible.
It could, not all the time. Now, some people, just as they get older, their bodies adjust. They don't produce enough serotonin. They overproduce serotonin, just like you would if your thyroid was out of whack, or something like that. But from a military standpoint, what I see happening most is, you get accustomed to doing a certain thing just like you do every day, and you're doing it 18, 20 hours a day on a deployment. You come back, you just can't turn off those natural responses that you've adjusted to and how you function, and your body reacts. And that's why you're always kind of going to that irritable stage, or that alert stage, because your body's reacting without you knowing it. It's trained. You trained it.
It's so funny. Heath and I were just talking about this because we were talking about our kids and, them on the video games, and and their minds are going a mile a minute. They're watching YouTube, they're playing, they're using their hands, and then they're on this video game going through all of this stuff, right? And so we were talking about the effects that it causes on school, because then to go sit down and talk with a teacher, or just have the teacher there in front of him, it's like, this is so slow. And we were saying that that is our military minds too, because we used to going a mile a minute during the day. You know, we may do like 10 tasks before 09 that most people can't even imagine. And then when you have to go and wait in a line or or just, you know, in civilian life, it just seems so slow. And so we are constantly training for this like hyper speed.
Yeah, definitely. Because if I go to a restaurant, there's more than a 10-minute wait to get a seat, I'm leaving.
Forget
Unless there's
it.
a bar for me to sit at, but I'm leaving.
Right. And I mean, even not just in a deployment scenario, but think about, Heath, when you go to work, right? You're always moving and shaking and
Yeah.
I got to go here and this phone call's coming in here. If you go to the civilian sector, which I'm finding out now, I'm the same way. I go in, I do vital signs on my patient. I do this, I walk around, I talk to people. I'm worried about COVID. I got this report to do. I've got that report to do. All of these things going on that you have, that they've added on to us. And you're so used to that's what we do. And you get out and you're getting paid to do one single thing. And again, it's kind of like we talked about in the past, when guys get out, they have so much time on their hands and now they start thinking more or they're bored.
Yes.
And when you, I know for me, you know, coming back, I'm used to working, and I'm having a hard time with going from working and multitasking to doing one thing and now have all this time and I get irritable and, you know, you just get aggravated easy and why this should be easy, but you have to retrain your body to go back into, or your mind to go back into that. Hey, this is what happens on the outside, but you know, we've become accustomed to do more with less. And that means just work.
Right. Bust your ass until you can do more with less, because it just takes ass busting to do a lot
And
of stuff
all
they
of
ask us
those
to do.
little stressors are adding to you. Oh, I got the stress of I got to get this report out by this time. So-and-so called and he's a skipper. I got to go up and fix his computer. That's a
Yeah.
stressor in the day I didn't have. I got this guy. I got, you know, all those little stressors add up. And before you know it, your body's reacting and your brain's reacting. And those stress, that's where it comes, you know, people that have never been to combat, never seen anybody die, hopefully, that do suffer from stress anxiety or stress, you know, PTSD, you know, because
definitely.
they're not used to working that way.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely see that, because I'm noticing now, since my tempo is kind of winding down, you know, due to probably retiring soon, that I was like, I got all this time on my hands.
Yeah, he's like, I gotta go to work. I was like, for what? You've got two chiefs, and they probably don't want you in their business, you know?
But yeah.
And I remember back in 2004, 2005, when I was on subs, we would kick guys off the sub. You know, they could be young, they could be old, but we used a diagnosis that wasn't even in the DSM at the time called adjustment disorder. It's now been put in there, but we were calling people adjustment disorder because the normal people normal civilians don't go through what we go through. So to adjust to that, and you cannot adjust, you know, you're 18, 20 years old coming in and just being bombarded from the left and the right and the top and the bottom, and everybody's asking you to do something and work till the work's done, not go home, you know, on normal hours, and they can't adjust and they lose it. They start cutting themselves or want to commit suicide. It's an adjustment disorder. They're not, it eventually leads to depression, but they just can't adjust to our world.
Right. So for our listeners out there, LT, what is DSM?
So that's the manual we use that has all the psychiatric diagnoses in it.
Great.
Mm.
So
adjustment disorder was not technically a diagnosis back in the day, but we would use it.
Okay, got it. So for our listeners, if you hear thunder, we're in the middle. Us and Lieutenant live probably 20 minutes from each other. So we're here. There's a lot of thunder in the background. So if you hear it, we're going through a little storm. It came from Texas. So why is it that people are so reluctant to ask for help with mental illness? Because I can get it. It's not like a broken arm. You can't see it. It's hard to test for. It's not like cancer where you go take a test for cancer. Why is it? What causes that? Is it because, I mean, what's the deal with that?
I mean, that's kind of one of my favorite questions that I get asked. It's because, you know, we're in a macho world, right? You're in the military. You're supposed to be strong. You're supposed to be tough. And that's just the way it goes. Whether you're female or male, it doesn't matter. You've got to step up, and you join the military. You're here for a reason. But people don't want to look weak. You know, back in the day, we had this huge stigma, especially around NSW, but subs as well, that you didn't want to look weak because the 1 minute somebody says, man, I really need to go talk to somebody, or maybe not in that words, but they're like, I'm having a tough time, or they break down, or they cry, or they have a little stress reaction, you know, people just start riding them really hard. I mean, think about it. You've got certain types of people in the military. Some can emphasize or be empathetic to people, and others can't, right?
Right.
Others are like, just get the job done. They're all about the mission. You know, they're looking at, hey, we've got to get this done no matter what. And just because they sacrifice themselves for it, they expect everybody to do it as well. And those are the guys that, you know, if I say I'm weak, or not that I'm weak, but I need help, and I go to mental health, and then I got to miss work for appointments, then I become the guy that's not pulling his weight in there. And then I get the lower eval. And then, you know, the next thing you know, I'm not getting promoted, and then I can't re-enlist. And it's just it was a downward cycle back in the day. It's getting better, but there's still that stigma out there depending on what community you're in. And I'm going to be honest, every community is different. Subs is different than NSW, from surface, from hospitals, from, you know, admin. Everybody's got their own thing. And it's just how much work you have is who's pulling their weight and who's not, is, you know, the go-to guy.
Yeah, I understand that because, and then even like you said, in the macho military world, we mentally, what is the word I'm thinking of? We're headstrong. So like if you're running and you're running and you're running and you're like, I'm going to do 1 more mile, you mentally have to overcome that. Not so much your body, but mentally. So we get such in this mode of mentally overcoming the suck and mentally overcoming the long hours or the no sleep or whatever. And so then when we say, I can't handle this situation, or I feel like anxiety, or I feel this way, it's like, well, I just got to mentally overcome that. And then if you can't, that's when you feel weak, or you feel like, come on, brain, you know, let me go.
Right. And think about it like this. It took me a while to get to this point, and everybody has a change, but that person that comes in and you ask them to knock out something in the work center and they just lose it, it's not because you asked them to do that. They may be having a sick spouse at home, or mom may be in the hospital, or they're financially strapped and they wreck their car and they can't buy diapers and formula for their kid. And that was the straw that broke that person's back, right? But all you see is, wow, I asked him to do this one thing. Whoa, they're weak. You know, I can't have this guy in my work center. It's easier to work without him. And then you write him off because you still have a mission. So you have to step back, and it takes a while to get to that point as a leader, or you have to be around it enough where you're like, this can't be what is really going on. There's something deeper. And that's where, you know, we talk about being leaders. You have to know your people. You have to, you know, you can be intrusive. You can call it intrusiveness, deck plate leadership, you know, all the terms we use in the Navy, but every one of your guys is different, and you have to get to know them on a level of what makes them tick and what's going on in their family. And maybe you don't know them like that, but you have to stop and say, what is going on? Pull them to the side. Don't just lash out at them and be like, hey, this is due in 20 minutes. Okay, it can be late or whatever, so that we can figure out what is causing this person to cry or break down, or, you know, huddle in a ball in the corner, whatever it is. Because I've seen it all. I've seen, you know, first classes on the sub go into the fetal position. I had a cook tell me one time he would disappear right in the middle of chow and come back after an hour. We couldn't find, on a submarine, we couldn't find this kid. I don't know where he was hiding. And he'd be like, I just needed a good cry. I'm like, what the heck's going on? I mean, just crazy stuff. So people lashing out, hitting other people. It's all underlying stress, a bunch of different stressors possibly that you have to dig into and figure out what is going on with this person.
And this is subs before females. So these are grown ass men stressed out beyond, you know, they could handle.
Mental illness doesn't play
care.
in gender.
Doesn't care. So is this a fast attack or a boomer?
It was a fast attack at a garage.
That's really small.
Yep.
So it's really small.
We had biggest crew was 209 guys. And like I said, you know, some of these guys take about 18 months to get qualified their watch station as nukes. And I lost 46 guys in a year.
My
46
shit.
guys.
gosh. Wow.
So,
Wow. Damn.
so
So
I was
that,
just fortunate none of them killed themselves.
right. But you had the skipper with his issue. Was it the skipper or the XO you said earlier?
Oh, well, this was in Afghanistan. This
Oh,
was
Afghanistan.
a CO.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think, and tell me if you agree with me, LT, but I'm thinking the whole weak stigma, right, around mental illness comes from not being able to visually see the problem.
it could. I think it's more of they're worried about what everybody's going to think of them, especially in the, the SOCOM or the small community level, or they're worried about their clearance or their money, and all of that plays into, if I go to mental health, they're going to pull my clearance. If I go to mental health, the other SWICs or SEALs or Rangers or ODA are going to look at me differently. All of that plays into a part. When the reality is, I would say that I know on the sub, it broke me a couple times. NSW has done the same. So I would say that, at least 60, 70% of people have the same thing, especially if you've seen any kind of, deployment where you went out and did something or lost somebody or somebody committed suicide. All of those people are just hiding it because, they just don't want to be that person.
And they're
Or they're
afraid that
waiting
they're
till the
not.
end of their career. A lot of them, get bitter and mean as they go. And then the end of their career, they want to go see psych and try to let it all out and release it at that point.
Right.
We had Chief Hager on and Herget
Herget,
on, and one of the myths that we thought was that you're not deployable once you go see mental health. And so that's a lot of the reason why people don't go and get treatment, because they think that they'll be non-deployable, or that they won't be able to do that. Do you see a lot of that?
So I do see a lot of that in the small communities, but I will tell you that if you get help, we get waivers for you. I mean, that's the way it works. In the surface community, there's a lot more people on SSRIs or psychotropic medications to go out on the ships and stuff like that. But when you're in a sub and you just don't have anybody but a IDC, and you could be 3 days from nowhere, we really regulate what you can be on. So there is a different situation, but those guys can transfer over to the surface community.
Right. They still get their deployments in.
Yeah, and in NSW, we have people on psychotropic medications, whether it's Adderall or Zoloft or in Prozac, whatever it is, and as long as they're maintained it for 90 to 180 days without changing their meds and they're stable on it, we get a waiver and we get them back out there.
Yeah, that's good, because a lot of people worry they're not deployable, then that's going to affect them. You were a chief, them boards, they look at stuff like that. How many
Right.
deployments did you do and all that? So, and the board doesn't know what medicine, that's HIPAA. They can't know what medication you're on or what mental condition or any kind of health conditions you have. They just know, are you performing or you're not performing?
Right, and we send those waivers go all the way up to ViewMed and ViewPERS for approval. So once it's done, unless you have a new incident and we have to get a different waiver. But once you're set, it affects your whole career. You're good for the rest of your career as long as you're on that medication, at that dose.
So everybody listening, you can get help and you can still do your job and you can still promote.
Absolutely. I recommend that if you're feeling any kind of overwhelming stress or anxiety or depression or anything like that, go talk to somebody, get the help, because it's going, even if you just talk to somebody, it's going to help you relieve that. And it's somebody outside that doesn't know you, doesn't have an vested interest in your chain of command. They're there to listen and give you behavioral techniques to help you get over that hump.
And so when you mentioned that NSW and NSO, they can take these medicines, what about like your aviation, those in flight status? They can't take any medications.
Right. So that's kind of, I think, I'm not in the aviation community. I know they're regulated just as hard as subs are, because subs, you can't take psychotropic medications either. So again, like I said, every community has their own little knickknacks, and I would have to ask somebody in the air community. But I know pilots are really regulated, air crew are really regulated on what they can take. I mean, we can't give them Benadryl or simple stuff that'll make them drowsy before they fly, or we got to do a down shit on them.
Right.
but I'm not 100% sure on that. But my train of thought is, if you're at that point to where it's affecting your life, and I get it, you have a career, but your life and your family, because you're not the only one that's feeling it. Your family's feeling it too. Your family, your kids, everybody has that. Just because you think that you're hiding it, you're not hiding it, you know? Talking to what was the senior chief ETCS from the sub? The one you did the first one on?
Oh, he was a ETC. Yeah.
Yeah,
she forgets.
ETC, and then from the drive on guy, you
Yeah.
know, all of them, both of them said your family feels it too. Because if you're irritable, if you isolate yourself, you know, your family's going to be, hey, why is he going through this? Okay, let's give him time. But the reality is, then you feel like you're pushing him away. So it just builds and builds and builds. So, you know, your career is one thing, but when your career in the Navy's over, your family still needs to be there for you. So I recommend anybody having issues, go talk to somebody.
Yeah. And not to mention the people you have control of their lives. You're flying aircraft or you're controlling aircraft. A lot of people rely on you to do your job or they die. So if you're go ahead.
That's why we have the aviation docs and the sub docs and the, you know, spec op docs, and everybody knows their field. So once you go talk to that person and they put you in contact with mental health or behavioral health or whoever you're talking to, whether it's a psychiatrist, psychologist, a social worker, they're going to explain to you hey, yeah, okay, you're getting some benefit from behavioral techniques and modifications to your lifestyle or to your actions. And we can't put you on this medication right now because you're in this status. Here's what we have for you. They're going to work with you and try to get you. And if it's in your best interest to be put on a medication, then they're going to have that discussion as well. There's no medication that any of our guys get put on that they don't have a say in.
That's good
You
to
have
know.
a say in
Awesome.
every medication, every surgery you do, unless it's an emergency surgery. But your shoulder hurts and you need a surgery and you don't want to do it right now. The doctor's like, we got to do this. You don't have to do it right now if it's not an emergent life or death surgery. So you're going to have input on your career as well.
Yeah, I know I've talked to a lot of guys that retired that saw a lot of shit in their day. And they said, well, we got these drugs because look, I don't want anything that's habit forming or anything like that. And they were like, Roger that, we'll give you this instead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's up to the member or the person dealing with it.
It's a team. You
Right.
in that position are a team at that point.
Right.
And you have honest, frank talks. And there's been times I'm like, nope, I'm not doing that for you. You're asking for this. No, but I can give you this. Or I'll tell them, well, I recommend you go on this. And they're like, I don't want that to affect me. And I'm like, well, yeah, it could affect you. We'd have to get a waiver. I don't even want to go down that process. What else you have? Okay, this is what else we have. So
That's good to know. You have plan A, B, C, you know, and you can you can tailor it to that member and their needs and their wants and their career.
And it doesn't have to go through your chief or your, you know, your lieutenant or your commander or anything like that. The only person that has the authority besides medical to know what's really going on with you is your commanding officer.
Right.
Wow.
And that's on a need to know basis. And if he wants to know how many people are on psychotropic medications, we tell him because he's overall responsible for you and the command. But the XO doesn't need to know, the CMC that we give them, you know, we'll talk to you. I'll be like, hey, you know, is it okay if I go tell the CMC, you know, you're a senior chief, he's a master chief. I want to let him know what's going on with you. I'm not going to bring up any of your private stuff. I'm just going to tell him we're starting you on a medication, you know,
Wow.
and you say no. I'm like, okay, well, just to let you know, I have to let the CO know if he asks, but other than that, or if it's going to be a detriment to the command, if I'm going to lose.
Right. Right. That's good to know that.
That's HIPAA compliance right there, so that you're covered as well. You don't have to tell everybody in your shop what's going on. Now, 90% of the time, the guy comes back, tells everybody in the shop what's going on, and then, you know, everybody knows, well, that wasn't my fault.
No, yeah. Once you say something, it's not hip anymore.
Yeah, you told everybody. I didn't tell anybody.
Right. Definitely. So we're going to have to wrap this up soon because I'm afraid we're going to lose electricity.
Oh,
It is
yeah.
nasty out there.
But no, sir, we just thank you so
No,
much.
I got one more. I got another question
Oh,
though.
go.
I'm not done yet.
Oh, I thought
One
you
more
said
question.
wrapping up.
Wrap it up with one more question. So you've been in Navy 27 years, like we talked about. So from 27 years ago, you know, young HN Joe Ramirez to Lieutenant Ramirez getting ready to retire. When it comes to mental health, how's the Navy, how's it evolved from back then to now? Would you say in a positive direction?
Absolutely. So I could tell you just on the last 10 years alone, I've seen no one in NSW want to go to medical because it was a stigma, to people are actually asking for help. Everybody, they understand that this, even if we're not in a wartime scenario, they're getting put through, they're trained to kill somebody for 2 years and then they go, or 18 months and they go on deployment. That's not natural either, right?
No, no, hell no.
But I've noticed in my time in NSW since 2014 or 2012, actually, more people are going out and talking to them, and it's okay. They get the talk. Sometimes they just need to vent. Sometimes they get put on meds, and then they get back to their careers and their work even stronger. So I would say that, yeah, absolutely. I've had chiefs come up to me. I've had E1s, E2s. I've had officers, captains. If you ask for help, again, it's kept at a confidential level between you and your provider. And most people are okay with that. And they go and they know they want to get better because they enjoy doing what they're doing and they're just not mentally in the right place at that time. And once we get them stabilized, they get back to where they were and they're happier, they're healthier, their overall mood, their family life becomes better. Everything reverts back to where they wanted to be, where they were.
And then would you say most of the time, those members that do ask for help, do they feel happy about having gone to seek help, or do you ever see any negatives or positives with that?
Every now and then you'll see somebody that's not happy with their psychiatrist or psychologist. And what we do is refer them to a second person and get them out for that one. But for the most part, honestly, what I see is those guys going back and now they have the tools to identify it in their peers, their shipmates, whether they're what unit they're with, and they talk to their own guys about it. It's just the communities help each other out once they have that education and that knowledge, and they know that when they go down that path, they're not going to be punished. They're getting back and they can get back to PE evals and where they were, and they try to spread the wealth and help their shipmates out.
That's great. It's weird when you say that, man, that when people, you don't realize what you do until somebody says, look, you do this, this, and this. We don't do normal stuff.
Absolutely.
We're not doing when your parents as a little kid, they never say, well, I hope you get trained to kill somebody for 2 years and then go to the point for 6 months. It's not normal for us. And there's other people out there that aren't military that do stuff that's not normal. So it's okay to get help, and it will do nothing but work for you in the end.
Right. And I think you guys are reaching a huge platform and bringing this to the front, and it's helping so many people, because there's going to be people out there like that ETC that you interviewed that are helping other shipmates out constantly, and people that hear his story or hear the drive on guy's story or see what they've been through, or even your story, Jamie, of when you were in Djibouti, and they're realizing, whoa, I'm not the only one going through this. And look, they've made an avenue. So you're bringing it out to a whole bigger population that's going to help so many more people. So thank you guys for that.
Oh man, our pleasure.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming on, man. I know this is not your thing, and for you to come on, that really is humbling, and I really appreciate it, because you did an outstanding job and explained it at a level for everybody to understand.
Yeah.
I think.
Thank you so much,
Thank
man.
you, guys.
This was such a good insight and a lot of things that I didn't know. And I hope that it helps. Like we said, if it helps one person, it's worth it.
Definitely. We're gonna wrap it up with my friend Lieutenant Joe Ramirez,
Yeah.
and
As
and-
always, we wish you fair winds.
and following seas. Hang on a second, Joe. I'm gonna stop recording real quick.
Yeah, that was good, man. I didn't know all of that stuff about the hormones.